Hello and welcome to Deprogrammed on Unsafe Space. I am your host, Keri Smith, and I'm joined today by another YouTube host, Nina Infinity. I've had the pleasure of being on her channel. She is lovely, she's intelligent, she's funny. She hosts a couple of different shows on Nina Infinity. One is called Infinite Talk, where she talks about crazy clown world that we're currently in. And also, I would say hits on a little more on the entertainment topics. And crosses over with some of the guys like Friday Night Tights guys. And then she also has a show called Infinite Hope, which is all about finding the positive in the world, which we need more of. Anyway, welcome, Nina. I'm happy to have you on Unsafe Space.
Hi, Keri. Hello. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Thanks for your patience. Carter had a baby and I'm moving. So we've been a little discombobulated.
Oh, yay, babies.
I know.
That's awesome. Send him my heartfelt congratulations.
I will. I can hear the baby too sometimes in the background, which is new because usually there's noise with my dog in the background, but now there's noise on Carter's and you can hear the baby once in a while.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, we need new life. We need new life in this world. So
yes,
that's great.
So tell me about, before we get into who you are, for anyone who may not be familiar with the show, what is in your background? What are these posters?
Oh, these are anime posters. So that's Cowboy Bebop directly behind me. That's Faye Valentine. I've been a huge fan of anime all my life. So I had to represent the anime. This is Major Kusanagi from Ghost in the Shell. And this poster here is the Record of Lotus Wars. It's a very classic anime, which I also love.
Oh,
turn my camera off there. Now you can see the whole thing.
Right on.
Yeah.
So was that accurate of me to describe you as being more in the pop culture entertainment space when you talk about Clown World? Can you tell people a little bit about your show and how you started doing
actually, well, it's a little bit of a crossover. It does cover all sorts of topic, including entertainment, especially what's going on with our culture right now. But everything is political now as well. So we talk a lot about politics on the Wednesday show, especially with what's going on with COVID and everything like that. We cover everything that's going on because I've always felt like you need to look at objective reality as it is. So like I like to kind of like take that all in for Wednesday, and whether that's like entertainment news or what's going on in the world politic wise, and when I say politic wise, I don't even mean just the United States alone. We do a world coverage. I'd like to do a world coverage because, the earth, it's not just, US and Canada, everyone, there's something going on everywhere all at the same time. So like right now, Austria is big in the news. Australia is big in the news. Canada is big in the news because of how they're, handling the whole COVID ordeal. So I like to highlight those things as well as entertainment, because entertainment is also under attack and has been under attack for a while. So we talk about all of that kind of stuff.
You're I think maybe your brain works a little bit like mine does, and sort of being interested in lots of different things at once and pulling those things in. And so I completely understand that you're like covering world news, but then also the entertainment stuff. And then you also have some knowledge on, when I was on your show, we started talking about personality disorders and narcissism, which is interesting, and true crime and that whole interest as well. So I like that you can just kind of jump around.
That totally interests me as well. And I think that actually that goes with basically what's going on in the world today in general, because I think that psychopathy in general is what is the problem with our world. I think that a lot of people don't understand that how much psychopathy and psychology goes into everything that's happening. We like to, as normal people with souls and, heart and empathy, we like to project that empathy and that care and everything onto everyone, including bodies of government or even individuals within government that don't necessarily look at us the way we look at them. They are psychopaths and they don't have empathy, and they just basically pretend to be good people. So that kind of bleeds into everything, and that includes entertainment, of course. Like everyone kind of knows, like Hollyweird can be very weird, very dark. It's a very dark world there in a lot of ways. So I think that also plays in a factor, because psychology and psychopathy is just, it's in everything. It's in your own home. It's within yourself. Like, that's how I started studying it, was understanding that as everyone, including myself, has a bit of narcissism in them, and going into the idea of which wolf do you want to feed, like whether you want to, kind of like feed that the inner voice in yourself that's empathetic and loving and kind and whatever, to the other one that's more selfish, uncaring, wants to do, just get ahead of everyone, and which one do you want to feed? So that's kind of how I started my journey into like self-reflection and understanding how psychopathy affects the world. And then it just went into this grander scheme of things, where I started reading like things like political ponerology that I sent to you, and understanding like evil, and how it's not just created, but how it maintains its hold over the world, because evil has always been there.
Yes. So. Can you tell people, I can't wait to read this book. I haven't started yet. We have book club this month, and we're working on Margaret Atwood currently. But I looked up that book, and can you tell people a little bit about the subject of that book? Because I think there's some people in our audience who'd be fascinated by that.
Yeah, absolutely. So political ponerology, I believe it's by Andrew Wojnarowski. I always have a problem saying his last name. I apologize that I butchered it.
Go wow.
Yeah, but he was a Holocaust survivor. He's a Polish survivor. So, and he's a PhD psychologist. He went through a lot of basically what we're kind of going through now. And then he wrote a book about it, which actually was not published until way later on. I think it was around 2004 that they published it finally. But he had this manuscript. He finally got it to some people that decided to publish it. But long story short, the book is about it's about evil. And it's about how evil maintains its hold over a population, how it gets rooted. He actually makes up words to describe what he's describing, because it's kind of like a phenomena that keeps happening over and over, and we don't have these words for it. So he makes up these words for it, like he calls some people spellbinders. Like spellbinders is referred to people in the news, people who like mainstream media, who want to basically put a spell on you to keep you in the sleep, keep you under a spell of what's going on, and paint you this picture that's not actually happening, but it is happening. So he has vocabulary that he uses. So ponerology is his word that he has kind of coined to describe our world and what happens when a person gets ponerized. And it's fascinating. It's a fascinating read.
Yeah. Anyway, I wish I had read the book before I talked to you, because then we could talk about it. But I've been.
It's gonna take you a while to read it, Keri, because it's very heavy. It's a very heavy read. Like I said, because he does make up, like he has a dictionary that he puts, and like I think it's like in the very first chapter or second chapter. So it's a little bit hard to follow at first, and it deals with such heavy topics that like just makes you kind of like you have to, you have to read it and then reflect, just kind of like digest what you're reading. The book's full title is Political Ponerology: A Science on the Nature of Evil Adjusted for Political Purposes. And I feel like that name kind of says it all. It is the science of evil. This book is basically what does evil mean, and how does it take root, and how does society fall to it? And how do we stop it? Can we stop it?
I think it's so seductive. One of the things that I've learned in the past few years, I think, is that I used to be sort of naive that most people could see evil and not be seduced by it. And I don't think that's the case. Now I just I've gotten better at listening to my gut, and also at recognizing certain patterns of behavior, patterns of disordered behavior that personality disorder people exhibit, and better at seeing some of these red flags. And so when I see someone now in the media who's putting off obvious narcissistic or sociopathic vibes, and no one, it doesn't seem to stop them. In fact, I think it helps them in some cases. I think that,
well, some people get off on it because
yeah,
they have I don't know. I don't know
they
where it
build
comes from.
followings. They build
Yes.
followings.
Yes. But I don't know where it comes from, like within their nature, like whether it's there to begin with, that's the whole other story, or whether it's formulated throughout their like societal upbringing, like that's what kind of like turns you into a sociopath, or, like going forward with like what you learned in your life and how it affected you. So like social media right now has been making kind of like a generation of narcissists slash sociopaths in a way,
Yes.
because of what you just said. Like, for example, like the whole like factor. Like, I'm just going to do this because I want to get likes, and I want to be recognized for whatever this belief is. Even though I have no idea of what I'm talking about, I'm just going to go and,
Yeah.
put this opinion out there. For example, like right now, the Kyle Rittenhouse trial is going on. And you see, like on Twitter, you go on there and you see like all these tweets from people, most of the time with blue check marks, but a lot of like the very ignorant tweets, where they're talking about something about Kyle or whatever. And you're like, well, did you even watch the trial? The trial has been televised. And it's like these people just formulate their own opinions and then
Yeah.
like just blurt it out online because they know there's a base that follows that opinion, and that's all they want. They don't actually care about facts or truth. They just want to be recognized for being part of this club. Like,
Yeah. They just want to speak to the base.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And like creating their own like, bubbles of not I don't like to say psychopath clubs or whatever, but they want to be around similarly minded people just like we do. Like everybody does that, right? Like,
Yeah.
but they especially want that kind of connection, I feel like. So that's why they're always like, doing like blockchains and like doing like all these kind of different things to surround themselves either with yes men or people who don't question them, or
Yes.
just basically like give them the credibility that they want, because that's all they want is to just have credibility. And that's one of the things that I was talking to
Yes.
Chrissy Mayer about, and also Eric July, that how much humor goes into discrediting these weirdos online, especially like these weirdo psychopaths that are like, pushing things like, the mask mandates and, all the very unjust, all the unjust things that are happening, because whether you're, for the vaccine or not, having it mandated and having like seeing right now what's going on in Austria, where the police are going around asking for vaccine passports because now they've mandated that they no longer are allowed to be outside. Unvaccinated people are not allowed to be outside unless they have the vax pass. Seeing those images and seeing those things, it just all goes into what is really happening. And can we stop it is the question. And I don't know if we can at this point.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find that answer, but I think that for me personally, it's been understanding, and this has been a long time coming since I started this study of the human nature and the human mind, is that we need to get decentralized. We need to move away from big cities. We need to get more involved in our local community, build a local community if you have to, get off the centralized situation where you're constantly, waiting on products to be delivered to you, and all that kind of stuff. Because get into food growth if you can, like get into producing your own things, and that way you're not reliant on the government for everything. So that I've been trying to do that for a long time, 20 years, over 20 years. So
And what does that look like for you? Like you moved away from the city, or?
well, I actually live kind of in the city right now because I live in Cancun. But when I lived in Vancouver, yes, I moved away from the city. I went to the farm area. And so now I moved to Mexico. where I'm trying to do the same thing, but I'm trying to rebuild everything in Mexico. So like right now, we currently just, we're looking at buying property. We're looking at, just expanding what we've got and becoming more self-sufficient. So like that, we want to try out like growing food and all that kind of stuff, like, you know what I mean? And we've done that in Canada. Like we did grow food in Canada, we did all that kind of stuff, and we're just kind of like, let's move it over here where you're not so bogged down with all these different things from the city, because that's one of the problems we had in Canada. Was doing anything, you needed permission from the city for everything, and it was just like a big yellow tape or red tape around everything that you wanted to do.
A lot of bureaucracy.
A lot of bureaucracy. And if you don't do it, they'll just take it away from you. They'll be like, no, this, like, we told you can't do this, or you should have known you couldn't do this. So we're just going to take this away from you. You're no longer allowed to be on this, even though you own your own property. Because technically it's not your property, it's the bank's property if you have a loan. Unless you do have a property, then it gets even more complicated. So it's just, that's why I'm like, you got to move away from big cities. And big cities brings more subliminal messages, and you know what I'm saying, like more commercial
spellbinders. Yes.
Yeah, spellbinders and all sorts of weird weirdos. So I try to get away with weird.
You're making me think of something that might seem innocuous to some people, but at the time it did not. And then I got accustomed to it, and I guess it seemed innocuous again. But when I first moved to Los Angeles, I was moving not just from North and South Carolina, but also I was pretty much coming directly from Tanzania. I'd spent half a year there. And so the culture shock moving to LA was a little high. It would have been high anyway, even if I just come straight from the Carolinas. And one of the things that I noticed was that living in such a big city for the first time is what you're talking about. The messaging is everywhere. At the time, I was just blown away with it in terms of, I was thinking about it in terms of consumerism and advertising, but there's messaging on every bus stop, every bus, everywhere your eyes alight during the day. If you're driving to work, your eyes are hit with constant messaging. Buy this, watch this, eat this, wear this, want this, desire
and
this.
Not to say that it's not like that anymore, even in small towns, because even if in the small towns you go, like, there's still going to be some aspect of that. But the more you, like, I feel like the further out you go, especially towards nature, the less you're going to see of that, and the more you're going to be connected to nature, because I mean, nature is healing in itself, right? Like there's so much healing properties within nature, and just being closer to nature will help you and your psychology and everything about you. That's part of the reason they want us to, be not in nature and, like, be disconnected, because when you're disconnected from the earth and your fellow human beings, you're a lot more likely to do heinous things and, not want to be part of that society. And it's weird to, like, using the word society. It's weird because I, like, constantly hear, for example, like on TV right now, or like not TV because I don't watch TV, but on social media and like on the news clips from the media, where, for example, they're interviewing Fauci, and Fauci will be like, well, you got to do this, this, and this if you want to be part of society. And I'm always like, well, I don't really want to be part of the society that you're building. I no longer want to be part of that psycho society. I think that in a way we are building separate societies. There are places that are completely disconnected now with regards to what's going on. For example, Florida and Texas. Whereas in, like, you see some, like, you have a different society going on over there, where you have a completely different society in Vancouver, Canada, or anywhere, like even Los Angeles, where you have, like, complete mandates and blah, 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 blah. And then you have freedom there. So you see, like, the old world where the new world are kind of like, there's two separate ones happening. And I think you're going to see more and more of that on a smaller scale and on a bigger scale. I think people are just going to, like, people think that this is going to end. It's not going to end. it's just going to change. And what
Yeah.
like that change means is that that's why there's such a mass exodus everywhere right now. Like if you're in California and you're like, even if you're a liberal, you may not necessarily agree with what's going on with regards to the mandates and stuff like that. And you'd be like, well, where can I go? Oh, okay, like Florida's free, Texas is free, blah, blah, blah. And you're just kind of like drawn to these like other places because you're like, well, I kind of want my life back, even if you don't want to admit to yourself that like, oh, I'm going to a red state or whatever. At some point, everyone has like a level, right? That they're like, I'm not willing to cross over this anymore. So like once you get to that level, then you'll start making changes within your own life. And I think that that's going to happen more and more and more, because a lot of people think that there's going to be like civil war happening or something like that. I don't think that's the case. I think we're just going to, by nature, like just separate, not like in a war, like not in the conventional, like the old school, like, oh, let's pick up guns and kill each other. And I don't think that's going to happen.
Interesting. We just read for book club, Texas, which is by Daniel Miller. And he's basically laying out a case for Texas exiting the Union. And he doesn't necessarily think, because I think we're led to believe that it would necessarily result in a war. And I believed that for a while, but his book changed my mind about that. I'm starting to lean more towards what you're saying is that it might just be you might be able to achieve a peaceful separation in the way that Brexit happened.
Kind of,
He
yeah.
was comparing it more to the Brexit movement and less to secession in the way that we think of secession historically in the US.
Exactly. Because I mean, like everything has changed. And I think that even with regards to tyranny, right? Like they have a blueprint. They know what's worked. They know what hasn't worked. And they're like, okay, we have this blueprint. We know what to do now to get people to succumb to our will. That's why they keep like doing these weird things where they're like, oh, this is for your own good. They try to paint themselves as these kind of like bleeding hearts, like, all we care about is you and your well-being. So when we told you not to go see grandma, we only cared about you and your grandma. They never cared. What I'm saying? Like they had there's no care at all. In fact, what they care about is keeping people sick, because that's how they make money. That's why cancer has never been cured, because they're in the business of keeping people sick and keeping people unhealthy.
Look at the Kyle Rittenhouse trial that what you mentioned is a great example. Here's a guy who went to try and protect private property and businesses from being destroyed and looted, many of which were Black owned. And one of the guys he defended himself against and killed was a convicted pedophile who was using the N-word. And yet they still tell us they care about white supremacy and race and all these. And it's like, but you guys are vilifying someone who was there to defend Black businesses and kill someone who used the N-word, and somehow he's the white supremacist.
Well, that's the thing, right, Keri? Because the Spellbinders are putting out this narrative where most people don't even know that the guys he killed were white. A lot of people think that they're Black. And it's really like, it's the most bizarre thing to me that even with what's going on with as high, like a high case trial. Is that what is
high profile?
High profile, thank you. As high profile of a case that this is with regards to Kyle, that people still don't know any of the facts. Like they're not watching the trial, or like they have these formulated things in their minds, and then they're like, okay, we're just gonna run with this. And like they haven't even looked up who these victims were. It's the most bizarre thing, but at the same time, it makes complete sense when you read something like political ponerology and you find out what goes into making these spellbinders do the things that they do, and then what happens when you are spellbound, and when there's really nothing you can do unless you receive an extreme shock where you wake up. Or as I guess some people like to call it, black pilled or blue pilled or whatever you want to call it. You have to go through something like that on a personal level in order to actually see what is happening. And sometimes it can be very extremely painful.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. And it's funny because I did have to go through something personal, and it was sometimes when people ask, like, how do I wake up my girlfriend or my friend or my daughter? And it's hard to give advice because there's not like a book, this book list will do it, or this,
Mhm.
watch these documentaries and it'll do it. No, there's nothing like that. And on some level, you almost want to say, well, I hope they have a nervous breakdown of some
I
kind or
know,
a
it's
traumatic
weird.
event, because you don't want to wish that on someone. But it almost every person I've met who's left the social justice world and that spell,
Mhm.
that bad ideology, they went through a personal transformation. They went through a really
Yep.
dark period and then a rebirth and having to figure out who they were. And there was something traumatic that happened that caused them to then be able to, like you said, it's a jolt, it's a shock to the system, and your
Mhm.
eyes are newly open to everything.
Yep.
It's hard to explain, but yeah, it's almost like you don't want to wish that on anyone. But I also happen to think it's for the people who have actually had real transformations. There's a lot of con artists out there now. There's a lot
Mhm.
of this con artist, like, I'm going to pretend that I think it's becoming that word that gets overused, but a grift of its own, of like, I'm going
Yep.
to pretend to have left this party and joined this party or left this thing. And I'm like, wow, I can tell that if you claim that it happened quickly for you, I don't believe you. And if it didn't
Yeah.
involve some kind of personal transformation, I don't believe you. It's not
Yeah.
as simple as switching your ideas. It's a whole change in the way you live. You know?
Absolutely, and the people who do that are really easy to spot because,
Yeah.
they're just so fake and inauthentic that you're like, "Yeah, you're a faker." Like, yeah, you can
Oh
tell
yeah.
pretty fast, especially when you've gone through that transformation yourself. You're like, "Okay, I can spot the faker like a mile away."
Yeah.
And I
Well,
mean,
you can, but this gets back to what we were saying before about how many people can't.
right.
And the same thing with politicians. Like, I look at someone like a Kamala Harris, and
Mm,
it's obvious to me she's sociopathic. The way she laughs, her mannerisms, they're studied, they're performative. It's like an alien trying to impersonate a human.
mhm.
And I don't see why other people can't. Like, I mean, other people do see it, but I don't see why that's not obvious to everyone. Maybe it is. Maybe
Right.
that's why she only got 1%, and she was.
Yeah, well, the spellbinders are trying to make you think like, that people like her a lot more than they do like her. So I think that there's a bit of like I understand completely what you're saying because I've always been like not that I like Trump or anything. Like it wasn't like I wasn't a huge fan of Trump.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I thought that he had a better grasp on what was going on and was doing better for your country than Biden was, in some senses. And then like seeing Biden in the state that he's in, like he seems like he's just like near the end of his life and he's
Yeah.
very old and he has dementia or something or like you know what I'm saying and to think that he got the most votes out of like all your president it's just it's dumbfounding to me and in a way I feel like cuz we like being someone like I am I've always been into like conspiracy theories and like all that stuff. I don't think that I really feel like he is a puppet. He
Oh
is
yeah.
an embodiment of a puppet. Like I don't think you've ever
Yes.
come closer to a president who is as much of a puppet as Biden is.
Nina, have you
Insane.
heard what we've said on this show? I've said this several times. When he was running, we were saying this. He's a puppet, and it's not that the way I was trying to describe the difference, like you are, you just say he's like the biggest puppet. It's like most politicians, I believe, are puppets,
Hmm.
but Biden he has a very large puppet hole. So there's lots of hands up there controlling him.
Yeah.
Does
It's
that make
bizarre because I mean, I was
sense?
having a conversation with someone. I was like, "Well, who do you think is mostly his handler like Joe Biden?" Because I mean, he goes to
Yeah,
her for everything. He's always like, like, well, what am I supposed to do now? Like, where Jill? Like,
yeah,
where am I supposed to go? And Jill's always there, being like, "Come over here, like, or do
yeah.
this or do that." But I think it's his entire base who's like,
Yes.
just. putting the
Yeah, do
hands up there.
this.
I think it's a lot of it has to do with his base. I think like maybe Jill is like kind of like his handler now, but like otherwise everyone's taking advantage of the guy because he has no idea what's going on. And I think that see, and that's the part that gets really mucky for me with regards to Biden himself, because I feel like Biden, if you look at his history as a politician, you will know that Biden is a complete psychopath himself. He definitely was a very conscious, sociopathic man, narcissistic, whatever you want to call him, label him whatever you want. He was not a normal person. He lied a lot. And I think lying kind of gets your becomes a part of when lying becomes a part of your core. You change as a person.
Yeah,
You completely change.
I
Like
agree.
you change your frequency as a person, because
Yes.
we are frequency beings. So I think that you change that. And the amount of time this man has lied and tried. I mean, he's tried to like he got caught running for president lying, like in the 80s. I think it was like 86, 84, 86. I don't remember what year it was exactly, but he got caught lying and stealing somebody else's speech and like all the stuff. And
Plagiarizing. Yeah.
you plagiarizing, yeah. And I think that now we've come to a point where we're like, oh, we feel sorry for him because he's so old and frail and feeble and like all the stuff. But really, that's who he always was. It's that now he's just become like, now it's like he's like a lion without a fang. It doesn't mean he's no longer a lion. He's just doesn't have his fangs anymore and he can't bite you. But he's still that same old lion that has like, ate basically the entire jungle. Now you're just having this guy who's completely feeble, and now the other lions are like, okay, let's make this guy do whatever we want him to do.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that he's innocent. You know what I'm saying? So like, I don't know. I don't feel as bad for him as everyone, because everyone's like always like, oh, poor Biden. He's so old. He should be in a nursing home. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think he's gotten to this point because of how evil he was all his life. I don't think it has anything to
Yeah.
do with him being like, this poor misunderstood old man now. I think that in itself is also an image that they're trying to put out, that he's just so misunderstood and old and he doesn't know what he's saying. And
He's just the
poor
grandpa.
guy. Yeah, he's just
Yeah.
poor old grandpa. Like I saw him I saw this other thing from him the other day where he's hugging and kissing this little boy, and it looked really creepy. But apparently, I guess that the video is of his grandson, though, like at a funeral.
I saw that too. Yeah.
And I was like, either way, it's creepy to look at, because it's just, I don't know. It's just, there's something so creepy about him that you're like, and like, if you know the stuff that, the conspiracy people have known, like me, about his ties to like Epstein Island and like all the stuff like that, you still get creeped out because you're like, oh, like this guy is
Yeah.
just, and then he got the 80 million votes. Like, I don't, or 86 million or whatever. Supposedly.
Yeah. I don't really
I
have
think it's the
any.
spellbinders, man. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I don't have
think so.
any faith in the electoral process anymore. So,
You don't?
no, the bigger the election, the less faith I have in it.
I was going to
And
ask that. Do you like, what about local elections? Do you still think
I
that
have
there's some
greater
validity
faith
to
in
that?
those. Yeah.
Okay.
The small ones. And I also I think they matter more.
I think
But
so too. I think so too.
Yeah.
Especially like for school board and things like that really matter. Like I've always told people they should get involved. Like, get involved in your community. Like one of the things that was going on last year with regards to like the whole George Floyd thing and that happened, and everyone was like, well, what do we do, kind of thing, like this is all this stuff. And I'm like, well, get involved in your community, like get involved in your law enforcement, volunteer your time if you have to, like, get involved and get to know these people on the ground, because when you do know them, it's a lot less likely that there's going to be this disconnect when it comes to helping you as a human being. Because when you have a connection, if you have human connection, there's a lot more, it's a lot more likely that you're going to be heard and then people are going to come to your
Yeah.
aid when you need it than when there is none. That's why big cities are so messed up. Like I heard the other day, like some lady got something really bad happened to them on a Philadelphia train. And apparently everybody just watched and nobody did anything.
This is something I've noticed as well. Living in LA for as long as I did, I lived in New York for a year as well, and then living in small town like I've been doing for the past few years, plus, growing up in a small town, just being able to see that difference in the way you're connected to your community in a smaller town and the way that you're more anonymous in a big city. And the past few times I've driven through Austin or past Austin on the highway and looked, and to me, it looks like a hellscape now. It's just massive skyscrapers going up everywhere, construction,
concrete jungle. Yeah.
concrete jungle. It's starting to look like LA to me from a distance. And every time I go down there, it's massively different. In just a span of 2 or 3 years, they've put up all kinds of mixed use, buildings. So they have like a Whole Foods and a Target, and then on top, like lots of condos, and then behind it, more condos, and they're building all these spaces, cramming people in. It's starting to look a lot more like LA and New York, and people are going to become more anonymous towards one another. You're not going to know your neighbors. Even walking around there this weekend, there was this YouTuber, Sarah Higdon, was here. And so we went and hung out on Congress, and it's what you're talking about, Nina. It's just this sort of, if you were to be robbed, I don't know if people would respond in the same way as if it happened on a street here in a small town. And then take that and juxtapose it with what it's like living in a small town. We're moving further out. I'm following your advice without realizing I was following your advice. So we're moving further out to the country, and I got stuck in the mud a couple weeks ago. It had rained, a very, very heavy rain. Anyway, my truck got stuck, and immediately different neighbors who I don't even know in this new place, different guys with big trucks pulled over, an old guy and his wife came walking up. Somebody came walking up from over here. It's like the whole town's like, let's get you out of the mud.
Nice.
And then one person brings a chain, another person brings a truck.
Yep. That's small town living, man. Everybody loves each other and everybody wants to help. You know what's weird to me is like the other thing that I feel like they always do in, like, for example, in entertainment, because they want to make you feel like this is not normal or whatever. Like, I always feel like there's always these movies and these stories and all this stuff about how being in a small town is not good. Like, because then you're always like, be scared because these people are weirdos. They might want to kill you. Like, like it's like all of, they're always trying to make it seem like the small towns are the freaks. And it's like, no, in reality, the small towns are like where real legit community is built, and like actual friendships, and people caring about one another, and like all this stuff. And it's in the big cities where like the zombies reside, and they're they don't give a shit about you, and they just care about what's on their phone, and they just want to
you're right.
It's
like
so weird.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Deliverance, like that.
Or like that other movie, like what was it? I saw something recently that I was like, oh, of course, like the small towns are always like, the murderers. I forget. The only thing I remember, like even in TV, that like even resembled something like a small town actually being what a small town's like, was Gilmore Girls, where they had like this really small town, and the town in itself was like a character, because that's how small towns are, because they're so connected to each other that it forms its own personality. So like, I think that like that's probably the only TV show I've ever seen that a small town's been portrayed as very accurately as a soulful place where good people reside, and they actually just want to help each other and be part of each other's lives, and blah, blah, blah. But it's just like, it's just funny. I think that there's something to that as well, that like there's always this like thing about like, stay away from small towns, all racist, and they all want to kill you, and like I was just like, oh, okay. I always try to do the opposite of what they tell me to do.
I want to keep out the people that would work on, so let's just keep making those movies. So, like, you guys stay in your big cities. It's cool.
Yeah.
Like,
hey, they are entertaining too. They are entertaining.
Yeah, they are. Actually, I found out, we were looking up do you know Actual Justice Warrior? Sean Fitzgerald. He has a
No.
channel. You guys would probably dig each other. You should meet him. Anyway, he was talking about horror movies. He wants to shoot a horror movie at my new old house in Texas. And then we
Ooh.
were talking about famous movies that were shot at houses in Texas. And somebody asked, where's the house from Texas Chainsaw Massacre? And I wasn't sure. So we looked it up. It's 12 minutes from my house.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yes. I'm gonna go see it now.
You should totally go see it. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is I've never watched that movie because the idea freaks me out. I'm like, I'm not
Yeah.
watching this movie. I'm like, that's so creepy. Like,
It's pretty creepy.
somebody did that. That's insane. I mean, that happens, right? But like, I guess that's what they call the outliers, right? Like, I don't know.
Well, that movie was so I don't know. Are you familiar with the serial killer Ed Gein?
I don't know.
So you got to look this guy up. He's speaking of psychopaths. I think it was the early 1900s, and he was killing people. He was also digging up corpses, and he was turning people into lampshades and stuff.
Oh,
When they
God.
actually found out, like, discovered that he was behind some of these disappearances, and they raided his house, they found all different kinds of human remains. He had even taken I think it was earlobes or belly buttons or something to make the lampshade poles. He just was fashioning
God.
stuff out of human body parts. Just very, I mean, the definition of a ghoul.
Yeah.
Ghoulish. And so his story, there were so many different iconic horror films that got inspiration from that wicked guy. And so I've been told Psycho was based on him, because he also had this weird relationship with his mom, and when she died, he sealed up the room, and so the guy who wrote Psycho based a lot on him. The guy who wrote Texas Chainsaw Massacre based it a lot on him, and there was a third one. Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs, they based on him. So he inspired a lot of really horrific but iconic.
That's interesting. I'll have to look into him.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of this guy before.
Yeah,
I just looked him up. It looks
it is
creepy.
that women are more into this stuff than guys. I know, like, I always generally know I can talk to a woman about true crime, and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah."
I think it's because we're like, I don't like to use the word, like, we're smaller, and we're like, we have to watch out for predators all the time. You know what I mean? So like, we just like, we're into that, and then like, we're into like what makes a predator, like what, like that's what it's like for me. Like what makes you tick? Like I don't like, I understand what makes me tick, but what makes you tick is like really fascinating, especially when it comes to psychopaths, because I'm like, man, these people are like aliens. They're like literally aliens on Earth. They're like completely different than us. We're not the same species.
And what you were talking about early in the interview about when you're a person who's not disordered and you're trying to project the normal range of human emotion or human inspiration, human motivation onto people, you're going to get it wrong if you're doing that to someone who's personality disordered, because the motivations are not the same.
No, it's not at all. It's actually very similar to that movie American Psycho, where he's like, always like kind of like he goes in front of the mirror and he's like, and he's just like practicing how to smile, because they're like that. They don't know how to do it. They want to pretend that they are you. They want to pretend they have these emotions, but they know they don't have the emotions. And they know, and not only they know that they're different, they find themselves to be superior. That's the other thing, is that it's not only that they think that they're different. Oh, well, I'm different, whatever. It's that I'm superior and everybody else has to become like me because I'm the superior one.
They think that
you're inferior.
Primitive. Yeah, that we're primitive, and having human emotions and stuff is a primitive form, that they're somehow more evolved. Absolutely. But then they will mimic having emotions and mimic the normal range of human expression to try
especially like the predatory psychopaths, like for example, like people who want to And these are mostly like narcissists that want to prey on women, that they basically kind of like latch on, and then they formulate relationships with them, but the relationship is completely based on like a psychopathy relationship, where they've latched on like kind of like a parasite, and they just want to suck this person, drive everything, including monetary gain, and like
Yeah.
money, love, energy, everything. Like they just take all of it from these women. There's a book about that called the by Martha Stout, I believe.
Is it the
I think it's
sociopath
Martha
next
Stout.
door?
That No, not the sociopath next.
Oh,
So this one is Women Who Love Psychopaths, and also, oh, sorry, it's by Sandra Brown. She also wrote Women Who Run with Wolves, I believe, and these
okay.
are really good books to share here. I'm going to share my screen so you can see.
Okay.
Women Who Love Psychopaths, Inside Relationships of Inevitably Harm with Psychopaths, Sociopaths, Narcissists. So if you ever like know a woman that's been in love with a psychopath, they'll understand this book inside and out. Or if you ever feel like you know a woman that's about to be in
Yes.
like get into a relationship with a psychopath, like just give them this book and be like, hey, before you read this, you may wanna read this book. And she also has a test in the book where like women can check off what kind of person this person is that they're dating,
Yeah.
to find out if they're a psychopath or not. And it's a pretty legit test of like, it's pretty interesting. It's very reflective of what happens. And so like, I've actually given this book um to a lot of my girlfriends, because they were always like, well, like especially like if they're like in love with like getting a relationship with very toxic men or whoever. But usually those people, and there's just a lot of them out there, because like I said, we're all narcissistic. We all have a little bit of it in us.
Mhm.
Some people just feed that more. And if you're watching this afterwards, it's not just women that go through this. There's a lot of men that go through it as well. So don't think
Oh,
that I'm
yeah.
being sexist here.
Yeah.
Women
I
can
know a
be
lot of
very
men.
psychopathic. So
Yes.
this could also apply, like reverse the word, just turn the word woman to men. It could apply to women as well. So like, it's not just for women.
Nina, do you know the podcast Disaffected? Have we talked about that
Yes,
before? With Josh
yes.
Slocum?
I started
Yeah.
watching it after
Uh,
you recommended it to me.
It's
So
amazing, but he talks about all of the cluster B personality disorders, and sociopathy being one of them, the antisocial personality disorder. But he also talks a lot about borderline personality disorder, and that I think is maybe more accurate categorization for a lot of the women. I've known some men who've become involved with personality disordered women, and I
mhm.
would say those women probably fall more in that camp, maybe in the NPD as well. But if you've ever seen a friend, like a guy who's struggling with a woman, where it's sort of emotionally volatile, expecting you to be a mind reader,
Mhm.
getting upset with you for
Gaslighting
things that
you.
don't make any sense. Yeah, gaslighting you, and just this constant chaotic roller coaster.
And you're always walking on eggshells because you don't know what's gonna set them off.
Yes, exactly. Modifying your behavior. Do you think
Mm.
that these things are becoming more common? Josh and I have talked about this before. Do you think that these personality disorders are becoming more common, or is it just that we haven't noticed them before, or what's going
I
on?
I think that I think it's twofold. I think it's always been there. But I think that the social media factor has put in another there's another aspect to it now. Because I think that it was definitely um it's a predominant thing that's happened in our society for a long time. I just think that like with the social media as time goes on, right? You see these new aspects of psychology seeping into, or psychopathy seeping into different aspects of our lives. Like for example, being a social justice warrior or whatever, usually like we it happened to us because we see injustice. Like, you know, everyone sees injustice to some extent, and they don't know why it's there, or like why it's happening. So we've seen these, like, there's these different things that are wrong with our lives. Like, okay, for example, we know that some women have had it a lot harder than men throughout history. You know, like, that's why feminism exists. Like, you know, these types of things have happened, and it all goes with psychopathy, and, you know, what has happened in our lifetimes that has contributed to people feeling disenfranchised. So, like, I think that there was a point where we were kind of like leveling out a little bit, because we're starting to question a lot of these things and starting to read more and digest more information about psychopathy in general. But then I think that once social media hit the scene, it's like a double-edged sword, right? Like, there's good things about it, and then there's bad things, because people get like entirely caught up in that same thing that they're trying to stop, like being a narcissist, like, you know, like having Instagram. Like, I remember when, like, the, you know, the selfie thing first came out. I was like, wait, so we're just
The
taking
selfie
pictures of,
stick.
yeah, like, not
Yeah.
just the sticks, the idea of the selfie in general, like, to take a
Yes.
picture of yourself, and to like look at yourself and be like, oh, look at me, I'm so pretty today, I'm gonna post this on social media. Because
Yeah.
before that, taking a picture was usually, you
Someone
know,
takes it of
somebody
you.
takes it of you, or it was something else, like, you know, you're taking a picture of scenery or like whatever. And that, like, we took that out. Like, we took this, even like this thing where it's involved in, like, two people are involved in this, and we taken it out and given it to a machine, and now we're just taking selfies, which
Can
is
I
like, you know.
say, Nina, I vibe with you. So we are vibrating on a similar frequency.
I know, I love
Only
that
because
too.
I this is just a pet peeve of mine. It's for a while, and I don't want anyone to feel like I'm personally attacking them. I think I have a few selfies anyway on my Instagram, but for the most part, I don't. There's something that's always grossed me out about that. And when I see a person's feed, if that's all it is, it's just selfie, 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 and there's something so self-absorbed about it, but also uh, like no shame in like sometimes like it's like wow and also it's not even like nice photos, like you're in the bathroom and you're taking a selfie of yourself
Oh God.
like in
The
the
one,
bathroom
dude, the
mirror.
ones that they do in front of the mirror when they have like the, like, especially the
Yes.
dudes, and they take their shirts off and they do it in front of the mirror. And I'm like, so you're standing in front of me, you're literally like Narcissus, like you're standing in front of the mirror,
Yes.
looking at yourself, and then taking a picture of that. It's like,
And again,
I'm
I'm
just
not
like,
hating on
no, no,
like
no.
you said, I agree there's elements of narcissism in all of us, and in
Mhm,
general higher rates of narcissism in our current society and in
mhm.
everyone than there used to be, in part
Yeah.
because of stuff like this has become
Yeah.
popular.
Like,
And
don't get
but
me
yeah.
wrong, my entire Instagram is selfies, okay? Like, I'm not judging people, like, mine is selfies, because, like, my husband doesn't like pictures, so he doesn't take pictures of me, so I had to get a good camera that I can take pictures of myself.
Okay, now I gotta go look at
But,
your
like, you know what I
Instagram.
mean? But, like, otherwise, I love taking pictures with people. I'm just like, I just remember when it first started, I was like, because at the time I was reading all these books, and I was like, this is such a narcissistic society. Like, we're literally living in a place, we're
Yeah.
living in a world where we have coined the term selfie, where it's literally like, you know, a picture of the self, you know, condensed in this little word like selfie, like
I
sociopath,
like your
like, you know.
selfies. I'm looking at them right now. And you take a good photo.
Thank
Uh,
you. I
you
try.
do. You do. I'm following you now.
Yay.
Anyway, no, so that was a pet peeve for a while, but like I said, don't get me wrong. I have my own selfies that I've done, and my husband just taught me how to do the timer when I get it right.
Oh my God,
There's
I
all
have
these
to do
things on my
that.
phone I don't even know about. He's like,
I
you can do
know.
this. But one of the things lately that's my pet peeve, tell me what you think about this. This is another weird narcissism trend or thing. It's all the filters. And I'm not just talking about lighting filters. I'm talking about the ones where they're literally airbrushing your whole face to
Yeah.
where it doesn't even look human. It looks like a soft anime character or something.
Yeah.
And those, to me, they blow my mind that people would even post those because they don't look real.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you know, there, I forget which Hollywood celebrity it was that says, you know, if you're going to get plastic surgery, make sure it's good plastic surgery sort of thing. If you're going to airbrush your face, make sure you're airbrushing it like it's good, because
Yeah.
otherwise it's just sort of this, it looks like you're wearing a Halloween mask.
Yeah, it
Doesn't
doesn't
even
look
look real.
right. Yeah, you just
Yeah.
kind of look very plastic. And I mean, like I don't like filters on phones and stuff like that. Like I use it sometimes because I think like I just want to actually I do it when I want to make the colors pop out more, because I like sometimes I
Yeah.
feel like they don't,
I
like the
love that.
lighting
Yeah.
doesn't catch the like the lipstick or whatever, so I'll like, turn down the contrast or whatever, turn up the contrast, whatever, so you can get that like the shade of lipstick, like an extra shade of pink kind of
Yeah. It's
thing.
like artsy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But like otherwise, like I understand what you mean. And the other one that like kind of creeps me out nowadays is like,
The big eyes.
well, not
Okay.
the big eyes, the reface app. That stuff freaks me out because I'm like, okay, so now
Where's
we've
that
gone
one?
to, that one is like the one where people take a picture of themselves and then they juxtapose that picture onto like a movie scene that like of the characters. So now it's like a gif of like, you could take a picture of yourself. It's called like reface or whatever, and then it's like an app, and then you take your picture and then you put it on Gal Gadot's face, and then you become Wonder Woman. So then you can see yourself as whatever character the movie is. And I think those are like really creepy to me. Like I've never done one. Like I had someone do one for me because they wanted to see me like what I look like as. But I have such a conspiracy theory mind where I'm like, I don't want to take pictures and like give it to like any apps in general. Like I'm like, I don't know
Yeah.
what you're doing with this like collection of photos that are like, you're collecting here. And then two, I feel like
They
it's
insert you in a crime. No,
well,
go
yeah, but
ahead.
also I feel like it's narcissistic. It's like another level of narcissism where it's like I'm literally becoming this character. And I just want to, it's not even like it's like another step over cosplaying it, because I like cosplaying, but it's like I'm becoming this person and I can see myself in this person. And I have a problem with this idea of like the idea of seeing yourself in an entertainment, because I feel like it's become so like hammered in now, where you're like it's a constant battle of like the whole diversity thing and the
Yeah.
diversity hires and wanting to see yourself in everything. And I'm like, it's good not to see yourself in some things. It's good to separate yourself, take a step back, let people be other people, and then teach you lessons, because that's how you learn as a society, is by not being in everything and actually observing society once in a while. I feel like, again, that's like a narcissistic trait that we're
It
doing, where
is.
we constantly want to see ourselves in everything.
Did you see the news recently from Sesame Street that they're introducing the first Asian American Muppet? And they had a
Yes.
picture of her with Ernie. And I saw somebody ask the question, a very good question. Well, what race is Ernie? Like, we never knew Bert and Ernie's race or the pink one
Mm-mm.
or any of the. You could see yourself as a kid in all of these characters. Cookie
Yep.
Monster, Oscar the Grouch,
I used to
Gonzo was my
pretend I was
favorite.
the Little Mermaid from, the Little Mermaid from the Disney's version. For years, I like, reenacted myself as Little Mermaid when I was a kid. Like, and I don't have red hair, and I'm not a white girl. Like it's just, but I saw myself as the Little Mermaid because I, identified with her as a little kid. I understood what it was like to want to be somewhere else, because I grew up in Iran, and in Iran, you're very what's the word, repressed, and you want to be somewhere else. Like I wanted to be somewhere else, so I identified with her story of wanting to be somewhere else, not what her hair looked like or whatever. I just identified with her person and her character. And I think that that's what kids do. They identify with the person and the character. They don't really care what they look like, or they're, maybe they care a little bit what they look like when it comes to cute stuff like Elmo. Like, I mean, Elmo is like a
Yeah.
cute, fuzzy red character. And, what's there not to like about Elmo? But I mean, other than now, especially now that he's gone on this weird vaccine tirade, like,
They sound it
everybody
too.
take the backs now. Oh my
I thought
God.
that was just the bird.
Oh my God. No, they all did it. Freaking like the garbage guy did it, and then Elmo did it. What was it, Oscar the Grouch? Like Oscar the Grouch is like, get vaxxed, everybody. And I'm like, dude, you live in a trash can. Like, don't tell me stuff.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Nina, tell me a little bit about what compelled you to start your show, and also two big questions. You can start this however you want. How do you think being from Iran has affected your clear-sightedness when it comes to looking at the world and being objective about what's going on in the world?
Um, okay, so I'm gonna start with the Iran question first. So a lot, to put it shortly, a lot. I think that my life has it's a very I've lived a very interesting life because I've lived in basically three different countries now. Four if you count LA, because I lived there for a little bit too, but especially in Iran and moving to Canada from Iran when I was a kid, I experienced a huge culture shock when I moved to Canada. And then as I grew up and I learned about the Iranian history and what happened to basically cause my mom to leave Iran. So like the idea of the revolution, and then how it all went down, and how basically like the communists were used by the Islamics to get rid of the monarchy, and then being betrayed, and then having the communists be betrayed by the Islamists, and then basically killed off so that they can instill the theocracy that's going on in Iran, is it's a very very interesting thing that happened in my culture's history. And I think that has helped me form my thoughts now as an adult, that that the things I see about, especially about communism, comes from that a lot. Seeing that communism doesn't work at all in any society. The closest it's ever come to working has been maybe in Cuba, but that's because they literally like shut themselves off from the rest of the world and they didn't get anything else done. Their people weren't very happy about it though. So like, I don't know even if you could argue that it worked. But like every other society, whether it's Russia or China, like it's never worked well in any society, and it's always basically thrown every society in turmoil. That's why now I'm in shock, where I'm like, I can't believe the kids in the United States actually think that communism can save them from anything.
Yeah.
There's all this history where like go look at it, and like all this new generation has like oh well, it's never been done right before, so we can do it better now. And I think that's very naive, but that's every generation's right to be naive. When you're young, you're naive and you think
Yeah.
that's something that's going to work, and it's not going to work. But yeah, to like answer to your question, yes, it's definitely helped me shape who I am today as a woman. And understanding that like my mom fought for um the original feminist ideas, like the OG feminist ideas of the freedom of choice and the freedom to have independent thought, and to be able to not just equal rights, but like to just be able to like live as a person. These, especially the freedom of choice, was the foundation of classic feminism, which my mom was and instilled in me. And that's why the new feminism and like all the stuff that's coming out now, that's like that looks like feminism but is not, again, I feel like has been infiltrated by psychopaths. Like that movement has been completely infiltrated by psychopaths and changed completely. And they've ponerized the feminism movement. They ponerized the civil rights movement. How the civil rights movement was affected, it's been like it's been infiltrated. These movements, they all get infiltrated because they
Yeah.
realize when people come together and actually get shit done, they're like, oh, no, like the people in power, the psychopaths are like, no, we can't have these people wake other people up. stop our spellbinding of all these people. We can't have that happen. We need to infiltrate and make them become our team instead. And that's usually what happens. So they put their agents in there, and then they take over from the inside. They've always have done that. So that's why new feminism, or neo-feminism as I like to call it, is infiltrated. And now it's become like, oh, let's hate men instead of like, let's have a choice. Like, like, let's, can I have a choice to have a job and a career instead of going and raising babies and being a housewife or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Or like, in neo-feminists, they look down on that. Like, if you want to be a traditional home raiser, homemaker, like those things are taboo now. Like, you tell someone that you want to raise a family and you want to be a homemaker, most feminists will call you, like, will think that's horrible. That's a horrible thing. And you have internalized misogyny, and there's something wrong with you, that you don't want to take advantage of being able to go off to work. Like that. It's the craziest thing to me. And I'm like, well, that's what it means when a movement gets infiltrated, and you get all these different kinds
and
of, like,
perverted, and
yeah,
they're doing the same thing with the church right now. They're trying to infiltrate the Christian church and to use your word, ponerize it. But I think they're trying to turn it into an agent for the same bad communist Marxist ideology, and put God's stamp on it. So it's like in every place that it can seep, it seeps into, and tries to turn people who have good intent into foot soldiers for the very things they think they're fighting against.
That's very true and accurate. The scarier thing about the church, though, I feel like, is that the church is also rooted in a really dark history as well. So, like, I feel like a lot of that also has to do with psychopathy. The thing about the church is that I've always been like, because I believe, not that I believe in Jesus, but I do believe in Jesus Christ in the terms of, like, because I'm not religious. I'm an agnostic person. I believe in all religions. I think that and I believe in God. I think that God exists. I just don't, I don't think it's any specific thing that happened. And everybody has their own version of religious beliefs that they believe in. But I think that, like, because I come from Iran, again, going back to Iran, and seeing a very deep rooted religion take over a society and manipulate it the way it has, and the things that I've seen, it made me kind of a little bit, like, step back from organized religion the way that it's been run. So I think that the church, especially if you look at history, obviously has some dark history, but I think that it also, what's lacking now, and what goes into all of this as well, is the lack of spirituality that people are feeling. So it's kind of like throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? Like, you have an organization like the church and spirituality, where it teaches a lot of good things and a lot of good lessons, and there's a lot of positive things to be gained from going to church and building a community and getting involved in your own, in this community of spiritual people that believe in the same thing as you do. There's a lot of positivity that goes with that. But then you have, like, the one or two psychopath, or whatever you want to call them, in those places, that kind of make it, turn it into the opposite of what is intended. And then you have everyone throw that, bathwater out, and you're like, well, you cannot, like, as a society, we need spirituality. That's why a lot of people, especially even atheists, are going back to that now, because they're like, a lot of atheists I've read are starting to think that they should raise their children with God, like, with some form of religion
Or
instilled
belief.
in them, the
Yeah.
belief, the idea of faith, and the idea of that there is a presence, in their children, because you could see a society kind of downgrades if you don't have that spiritual belief. And as I feel like that's extremely lacking nowadays, that spiritual connection is really, really lacking nowadays, and that's why we're having all these problems.
I agree.
So like I
Yeah.
it's really tricky. Like I think that I like church, and I think I like those kind of things because I think it really helps you become a better version of yourself. But again, like it all depends on who your pastor is. If your
It
pastor is
does.
like a psychopath at the end of the
It
day,
does.
it's really difficult.
I think people just need to get better at listening to their gut, identifying what their gut is saying and listening to it, and
Mhm.
also recognizing some of those patterns of behavior and those red flags
Mhm.
that are not normal, but that we tend to write off out of good faith and say, well, I'm assuming this person is a normal person and therefore this was a misunderstanding or what have you. It's
Right.
no.
Yeah,
Like,
and a lot of that starts like with, self-work, and like really like just easy stuff. Like, I recommended Political Ponerology, but that shouldn't be the first book you're gonna read if you're gonna start getting into this stuff. That's kind of like, that's like AP Calculus or whatever you want to call it. Like, when it comes to that kind of knowledge, like, start really slow. Start with books like Robert Hare stuff. I think hold on, let me look at Robert Hare's book. I think it's called The Sociopath Next Door, if I'm not
oh,
mistaken,
that's,
or The
yeah,
Psychopath Next Door. But Without a Conscience, by Robert Hare. Like there's really like easy stuff that you can get into to understand the basis, the very, very, the very first steps of seeing what the problem is. First, you have to diagnose it, right? And especially
yeah,
within yourself, to diagnose like, oh my God, this is how I see things. Maybe I shouldn't see it like that.
yeah,
And then once you finally diagnose it, and you admit you have a problem, then you'll become addicted to it in a way, because you'll be like, oh my God, like how did I not know all of this? And then you just kind of
yeah.
like, get into it, and you'll
Once
start
you
reading all
start
these
rooting
books.
something out of yourself, elements of something out of yourself, you start being better able to see it in other people
Yes.
because you've already identified it before.
Yeah.
And that's true with anything. Like, um, one of the one of the changes that happened when I left my social justice world was I started trying to make sure I knew what I was talking about before I said things. I'd
Mhm.
listened to Jordan Peterson talking about, do not speak lies, and speaking other people's opinions are lies. If you
Mhm.
haven't put in the work to hold that opinion, you should just get used to saying, I don't know enough about that to have an opinion yet.
Yes.
And so when I started doing that, then the more I started trying to root that out, that inclination to always want to have an answer or an opinion on something,
Mhm.
and I got more comfortable just saying, I don't know about that. Then I started seeing it everywhere. Everyone just sort of, speaking like robots, the opinion of their tribe without having, like you said, without having watched the Kyle Rittenhouse
Yeah.
trial, without even knowing the facts of the things they're talking about.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time.
Yeah, and
And
they don't
that's
wanna
true.
admit
Yeah.
fault. See, and that's the other thing, right? Like, one of the things that makes me believe that this situation with COVID is never gonna end is that most people in places of power never admit fault.
Mhm.
So, like, in order for it to end, they would have to admit that there was even a problem to begin with. They're never gonna admit that they made a mistake, by
Yeah.
shutting things down. They're never gonna admit that masks don't actually work. They're never going to admit that, like, what's going on with the vaccines and whatever problems it's causing may or may not be causing. And these mama YouTube or wherever you're listening to, these opinions are my own. It has nothing to do with Keri's. I am not a medical expert, so talk to your doctor.
So Nina, so tell me what was it that compelled you to start? your own YouTube channel and to start speaking your opinion on things?
That's an interesting story too, because I started by being in the chats. Like first, I was just like watching the YouTubes and blah blah blah, and then the night the Game of Thrones season 8 finale happened, I was devastated. I was completely devastated. I was like in tears, and my husband was like, you should go on this guy's channel. He always talks about this kind of stuff. His name is Nerdrotic. And I was like, okay, so I just like looked him up, and I see like this live stream happening that night, and I'm like, that freaking devastated, Keri. Like the night before, I had like, or the week before that, I had cried so much from like the Bells
Oh,
episode, and I was like just feeling so bad. So like I went in the chat, and I I think there was like 20,000 people or something like that in the chat
wow.
at that one time, and I'd never been on another live stream before, so I didn't even know that this was a thing that people did, because I had always just watched like a few minute YouTube here and there, right? So then I was like, oh my God, people are talking in this chat, and it's like a community. I never even, figured out that like this existed. So like I went into that chat, and then I through Gary, Nerdrotic, by the way, love that channel.
Mhm.
It Through his channel, I found all these other different ones, and another one that my husband had recommended to me, which was Anna, that Star Wars girl. And he was like, you'll like her. She's like this crazy nutty girl that she has a YouTube channel, and you'll probably really like her. And I did. So I started watching her stuff, and I was like, oh, and I realized they all knew each other. Like they kind of like crisscrossed. And so I started following Geeks and Gamers and like all this stuff. But then I found this other guys through all these ones. I found this guy named John Talks. So I went on his channel, and I was in the chat for a while. And I realized that the one thing that kind of stood out for me about John out of everybody else was that John always talked about psychology. He talked about the stuff that we talked about. He talked about spirituality, he talked about
Yeah.
religion, he talked about all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff that kind of blended into the entertainment. But he had a lot of like really cool opinions that I thought about, and the things that I thought about that had nothing to do with pop culture. So I was like, oh, this guy's so interesting. And I started like just listening to his show, and I was in the chat interacting with him. And he was really different, because he would actually like highlight a lot of people in the chat. And like, so we started getting to know each other in the chat. And so one day, after I started my YouTube channel, because some of the girls, including Anna and my nerdy home Stephanie and Mad's Mama Bear, a lot of people encouraged me to make my own channel. A lot of the ladies did, so I did, and I started to stream a little bit. I didn't have any content on my channel yet. I started streaming right away, and then when I found John, I was like, I emailed him, and I was like, hey, do you want to like, I'm streaming now. Do you want to like hang out? And he invited me on because he had like this hair cutting stream that he was doing, because this was like in the middle of the pandemic. And so he was like cutting his own hair like on stream. And he was like, yeah, come on, hang out with me while I do this. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing ever, but okay. So like I went on there, and it was really funny, but we ended up like talking about nothing. And I was like after the show, I was like, hey, can I come on again? And like we actually talk about stuff. And he was like, yeah, no problem. So like he invited me on, and then we started basically almost streaming every night after that, because we were like it was like the lockdowns, and we just started like we hit it off really well. So we started
Yeah.
talking, and then it just happened every night. It was like we were all in a really weird space back then. So like it was just happening all the time. And then after a while, we decided to do our weekly show, which is Infinite Talk, and it just kind of formed, and here we are. I think it's like almost 2 years now, like that we've been doing Infinite
Wow.
Talk.
Yeah.
So
And then tell me about Infinite Hope, because that's your positive. We try to do like a
yeah.
positive moment at the end of each show, but you do a whole positive show.
Yes, I do, because as much as I like to talk about objective reality and how crazy this world is, I also know that part of objective reality is knowing that there's always balance. There's evil, but there's also good. Kind of like the yin and yang, right? So like we may be in that dark spot in this yin yang, but there's always that light even within the dark. So I think that we need balance in this world. We need balance. And so I try my best to balance myself out with my show, Infinite Hope, because if I don't do it, then I will lose hope, and I can't lose hope. I need hope to be able to move forward, because everything that's going on, I'm very like, I don't want to use the word like, empathic or stuff like that. Like, but I'm very connected to a lot of things that goes on with people's emotions, and, what goes on in the world is really reflective of what's going on inside my own heart. So whenever I see all this dark stuff happen, I get negatively affected, and then I want to balance that out. I need to move forward with positive energy, and therefore I thought to myself, you know what, we need to do a show. I need to do a show where we talk about good things, whether that's like, something amazing that's happened in the news, or just watching cute animal videos, like, like whatever makes you happy, something positive, instead of like all this just negativity, bombarded fear porn all the time, which I have to keep up with. So I decided that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring balance to the world.
I love that, Nina. Well, I don't want to keep you too long. I want you to tell people, at the beginning, I mentioned your two shows, Infinite Talk and Infinite Hope, but you do a lot of other things. So can you just tell people where to find you if they want to find out more info?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me on, Keri. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, because it's rare to find people that are into psychology and psychopathy and like all the stuff we're into. So I'm always really happy to talk. So it's really cool.
I love talking. We're going to have you back for sure.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. But you can find me on Twitter is the best place to follow me and where I am, because I will post on Twitter, Nina7Infinity, at Nina7Infinity on my Twitter. But like I said, my main shows are Wednesdays and Fridays, which is Infinite Talk and Infinite Hope. And I will also do Breaking the Narrative on Wednesdays if John is unavailable. So either way, something will be happening on my channel Wednesdays. But you can also find me on Midnight's Edge on Mondays. I do a show with the lovely ladies, Lorena Creole and Mandy Summers, on Toxic Femininity with Tom Connors. So that's a really, really fun channel and a really fun show. We talk about a lot of pop culture stuff there, though. So like it's all usually entertainment related, not politics related. And then again, on Sundays on my own channel, most Sundays, I also do a live stream on my own channel in the evening where we talk about entertainment stuff. So we talk about like just, if we're watching a show at that time, we review it, we recap it, just fandom, goofy, all that kind of stuff.
And that's your Nina Infinity channel, right?
Yes, Nina Infinity channel. That's right. That's
cool. We'll put those in the description too. I just wanted you to tell everyone.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes. I only have one channel. It's not that confusing. It's just Nina Infinity. So that's it.
Well, thank you so much for being with us here today. And I hope you'll come back. We do Friday live streams with friends of the show. So I think it would be good to have you on sometime, maybe even with Slocum from Disaffected.
Yes, definitely. I would definitely love to meet all the people, because like I said, like your circle is my kind of people. So definitely.
Yeah, I love the way all these different communities are, because I found you through meeting the Friday Night Tights guys.
Yes, that's how I found you. I found you through Gary. Yeah.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you, Nina.
Of course.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, we have a deep content library that includes interviews with everyone from Mike Cernovich to Megan Murphy, so go check it out. If you'd like to see more, please consider supporting the show by visiting unsafespace.com/donate. You can find us on all the major social media platforms, at least for now, and you can find a community of like-minded individuals on our Unsafe Space chat on Telegram. See you there.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production has not been authorized by the Cathedral. Pay no attention to it. To be honest, I am running out of patience with the following individuals. Here's a fun fact. Experts agree that inflation is good for you. As a reminder, self-defense can only be used as a last resort. You are legally required to first see if your death effectively deters your attacker. If you think about it, no one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Science, scientific, and scientifically are registered trademarks at the World Economic Forum. Unauthorized use is prohibited. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is fake news. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.